Warning, the following video contains opinions that are mine and not anyone else's. All viewers of Banditex are encouraged to form their own opinion and to not follow mine directly. My favorite video game genre ever is the platformer. I don't care if the game is in 2D, 3D, open, or linear. Platformers are a great way to test your reflexes while offering simple yet challenging games. There are tons of these out there, but out of all the series that exist under the sun, Crash Bandicoot is my personal favorite out of all of them. As of this video, the series is 25 years old, and with the many highs and lows this series has seen, we have the first game, simply called Crash Bandicoot, to thank. Crash Bandicoot began development shortly after developer Naughty Dog completed Way of the Warrior on the Panasonic 3DO. While the game was slammed by critics, publisher Universal Interactive was impressed with Naughty Dog's work and signed them onto a 3-game contract. At this point in the gaming industry, video games were making the jump into 3D. While racing and fighting games were transitioning smoothly, there weren't many platformers to get hyped over. Upon witnessing this and selecting a console to develop for through the process of elimination, the PlayStation was selected for Naughty Dog's new and upcoming game, Willy the Wombat. Crash Bandicoot. Crash was released in 1996 for the original PlayStation, and while it didn't get as much love as Super Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64, Crash was able to demonstrate that the PlayStation was a worthy competitor, and a series was born. In today's episode, we're going back to the original game that started all, and to see if it's worth playing today. Before I start, this video will only cover the PlayStation 1 original. I will save my 2 cents for the Insane Trilogy in a future video down the road. The premise of this game is that an evil scientist by the name of Dr. Neocortex is hatching a plot for world domination. With the help of his assistant Dr. Nitrous Brio, or Embryo for short, the two plan to take the local wild animals on the fictional Wumpa Islands and mutate them with the Evolvo Ray, and then hypnotize them with the Cortex Vortex machine into doing their dirty work. Cortex, putting a lot of faith in a Bandicoot of all things, forces Crash into being the lead general of his army, but the Cortex Vortex malfunctions and rejects Crash. Crash escapes, but leaves another Bandicoot named Tana behind. While Cortex plans on using Tana instead, Crash washes up on a nearby beach and begins his adventure to save Tana, and to a lesser extent, the world. It's your run-of-the-mill damsel in distress story, but the characters are more interesting than something like Mario at least. Crash is a mostly mute protagonist, a move made so Naughty Dog could allow players to fill in the void. The cast of villains are debatably the real stars in this game, though in this entry, Cortex and Brio are the only ones with anything to say, but only get a handful of moments to do it. Most of the personality of the villains can be found through the manual, but the only thing to note is that Cortex didn't invent the Evolvo Ray, but Brio did, which helps add to Cortex's ego. A majority of the cast would improve in the sequels or be forgotten. But I digress, it's a platform game for all ages. I'm not expecting S-tier storytelling. Give me my objective and send me on my way, and this game does just that. Though the opening is only viewable after waiting on the title screen for about a minute, which was a strange move if you ask me. Crash Bandicoot is a 3D platformer where the objective is to get from start to finish. To dispatch baddies, Crash can jump on them like Super Mario or perform a spin move. One complaint I have heard many times about this game is that it just doesn't control well, but I strongly disagree. Crash has the right amount of weight to his jumps, and I never really found myself slipping off of ledges or sliding around uncontrollably. It helps that if you let go of the D-pad just as you land, Crash will stop dead in his tracks. Yeah, the D-pad. This game predates the DualShock controller, so you cannot use any sticks, which is not a big deal if you ask me. In general, the movement speed and jump height all feel right, which is impressive when you realize that this is the first platformer Naughty Dog made, and it was at a time when 3D platformers were new. One issue I do have with the spinning is that Crash moves faster when doing it, and there seems to be an invisible energy meter of sorts, as Crash can mash spin, but if abused, can't spin for about 5 seconds, which will leave you defenseless. This odd system was abandoned in every game afterward, including the remake. A core Crash staple are the many boxes plopped in every stage. There is a decent variety in each, and most will contain goodies like Wumpa Fruit, which gives Crash an extra life, extra lives themselves, bonus tokens, and even checkpoints come in the form of boxes. The boxes were made to help add some spice to the levels, and they do a great job. Smashing rows of boxes is just very satisfying to do, and with the large amount of rewards inside, you're encouraged to break as many as you can, so boxes are never tedious. The one exception are the TNT boxes, which function as hazards, but since the placement of these boxes feels thoughtful, and because Crash can only safely jump on these to break them, it helps make the gameplay more exciting. Scattered in levels are Aku Aku masks. These function as Crash's health. Collecting one will give you one hit, getting 2 will change the mask's color while giving you another hit, but 3 will make Crash become invincible, speeding him up and having boxes close to Crash break. The mask system is very rewarding and unique to this series, making it one of Crash's many highlights. The bonus tokens mentioned previously come in the form of Tana, Embryo, or Cortex, and collecting 3 will warp you to a bonus round. These are 2D challenges that have many lives to nab, but the Tana ones will allow you to save your game, and the 2 Cortex ones will give you keys, which are used to enter secret levels. The secret levels in question aren't super exciting, as these are harder variants of 2 levels that are already in the base game, but it does help give the bonus levels a reason to play them, at least for the Cortex ones. Occasionally, the game will offer different types of gameplay, with some levels being 2.5D stages, some levels having Crash running towards the screen and away from boulders, running a hog, and dark hallways where masks act as a light source. All of these variations help keep Crash Bandicoot fun and engaging. Crash Bandicoot is also a pretty tough game. Crash gets killed by just about anything in this game that moves, and pits are plentiful, but there is always a lot of Wumpa Fruit and extra lives scattered in each stage to prevent players from getting stuck or seeing that game over screen. I typically have 99 lives by the time I reach the midway point, but that's just me. I feel like as long as players hit boxes as they play, and play the bonus stages, they should have a good supply of Crash mugs to make it to Cortex. Every few stages or so, Crash will encounter a boss, these being Cortex's henchmen, and some fat guy. Papu Papu here being the only boss not working for Cortex. All of the bosses require some technique to figure out, and none are awful, but I don't think any of these guys are very challenging. What the hell? I killed him, didn't I? I mean, his health bar is gone, but it just keeps going. Not only does he keep going, he keeps getting faster. Sonic ain't got shit on this fucker. Damn, he just bolts forward. Okay, so now what do? It just keeps going. I smacked into him a bunch, but it's like he just keeps pounding the ground and glitching forward. I think I'm gonna jump on him. Okay, so that worked. I didn't expect that. Crash Bandicoot isn't a very long game, but there is a little more going on under the hood. Scattered in all 26 main levels are gems. In order to get a gem, you must break every box in a stage and not die beyond the first checkpoint. A feat not for the faint of heart. I already brought up how Crash can be a hard game at times, so that alone should be worrying, but sometimes boxes are hidden in strange spots. Up the Creek has a switch box that activates 2 boxes earlier in the stage with no outlines indicating that they exist. Some levels will ask Crash to walk onto certain spots only to have platforms magically poof into existence, and these can be irritating for some players. Sometimes a Wumpa Fruit or 2 will be placed in these spots to clue you in, but for the most part, the game will ask you to do these blindly. To make matters worse, there are 6 colored gems spread throughout the game. These will open up new paths that contain more boxes, and these can be seen as padding, as sometimes the new paths aren't interesting enough to warrant their inclusion, and players aren't told where to find the colored gems either. So, unless you have a guide, you'll just have to try getting every gem you can until you happen to find the right one. You know what's weird? Despite these flaws, I still love going for a 100% completion in this game. Why? Honestly, I don't know. I think I've just done this so many times that I grew null to the bullshit, but the 100% completion runs are always my favorite ones to do. I think it helps squeeze more time into Crash as a whole, and it provides a good test to your abilities, since it isn't too different from playing normally. Most levels aren't too long either. There are some exceptions, like Sunset Vista, which is about as tedious as a bad Family Guy episode, but with enough patience and practice, you too can achieve that 100% mark. Even if you hate this, the game's alternate ending is debatably not canon to the sequels anyway, so you could always not do this. Though I do think players will be missing out if they don't even bother attempting this. I'd say do it, but be cautious. Aside from an alternate ending, you can skip the final Cortex fight, so you can either end the game by jumping on several gem platforms, or through an alright boss fight. Your move. One massive flaw that I refuse to defend is the game's save system. So in order to simply save your game, you must either collect a gem, a key, or complete a Tana bonus round. Sounds simple enough, but the system itself is just messy. After about 10 years of playing Crash 1, I never learned how saving worked on my own. But the issue I have is that sometimes saving your game will send you back a few levels. This oddity happens because Tana bonus rounds save your progress in terms of how far you've made it in the game, but gem and key saves only save the collectibles themselves. This means that if you collected a total of 12 or so box gems, but only completed the Tana bonus round in level 2, then you will still have to replay many levels just to get back to where you were, which is just awful. Why Naughty Dog did it like this, we may never know, but it just sucks. It doesn't help that if you fail the Tana bonus rounds, you don't get another chance, and you will have to restart the stage just to try again. These aren't hard, but it is easy to mess up. Plus, there is that chance you may accidentally spin the Tana token away. I didn't open an FAQ just to learn how this whole thing worked. But this is mentioned within the game's instruction manual, so it at least has that. Still, players should have been given the option at the end of the level, gem or no gem, as it would have made things far more simple. All of that, and I have ignored the presentation. Crash Bandicoot, despite releasing in 1996 on a 32-bit machine, still looks pretty damn good in the present day. The art direction is nicely varied and cartoony, the animations on Crash are well done, and the game can even be a little creepy at times. The music is a little hit and miss in my opinion. Crash 1's OST excels in the atmospheric songs if you ask me. Songs like Temple Ruins are the highlights for me, and the game has some nice and bouncy tunes like the theme song and Hog levels. But that's kind of it. The sequels sound better in comparison, but this first entry is no slouch in the audio department. I also adore the game's sound effects. A lot of it is just stock cartoon stuff, but it helps sell the idea that Crash is a cartoon world that you have some influence over. What makes Crash even better is how fast the load times are, which are only 5 seconds long, really helping players get into the game ASAP. So, what's the verdict on Crash Bandicoot's first outing? Well, the game is pretty flawed, but overall, it's still a decent first entry. Crash Bandicoot 1 reminds me a lot of high-quality games from the Super Nintendo era in that it is a simple yet challenging game that doesn't rely on many gimmicks, and it gets by on its core gameplay structure. I give Crash Bandicoot a 7 out of 10. It offers a good challenge, it's somewhat original, and it helped kickstart what is, in my opinion, one of the greatest video game franchises ever made. It isn't perfect, in fact, it's somewhat outdated now when compared to its sequels, but I still like Crash Bandicoot, and I think you will too. That does it for this episode of Banditex. Thank you for watching.